Welcome to Archery Talk 101 podcast, your guide to better archery skills. We'll bring you the latest tips, tricks, and expert advice, but that's not all. We'll also have interviews with top archers and industry professionals and reviews of the latest gear and equipment and much more. Well, on today's episode of Arch Talk 101, we're going to have a special guest with us today. Hi, my name is Roy Canterbury, and I'm going to be your host today on Arch Talk 101. And on the line with us, we have John Brown, and he is going to tell us a little bit about himself so we can get to know him, and then we're going to find all kinds of cool stories. Welcome to the show, John.
Hey, Roy, thanks for having me. I work for Boyt Harness right now, which is a hunting accessory company. And actually, we're developing some archery products, mostly cases, because Boyt Harness is known for its hard and soft cases. We've actually been making cases for Athens Archery now for about a year. Before that, I worked for PSE Archery for 14 years. I shot for them. I still shoot for them, not well, but I shoot for them. Before that, I was a store manager for Gander Mountain. Been an outdoor writer, been in a few TV shows and stuff like that. Worked for the New York Outdoorsman Hall of Fame, where I was actually named Outdoorsman of the Year back in 2004, which seems like a lifetime ago.
Yeah.
But I've been a hunting guide. Love to hunt. Love to write about it. Love to talk about it, obviously, because I'm here. But I first got started in archery back in 1981, I believe it was. I went to a YMCA camp, summer camp, and they had shooting there. They had 22s and bows and arrows. And I did pretty well on it, and I really enjoyed it. I didn't grow up in a real hunting family, so it was a new experience for me. A lot of my friends did it, and that was kind of the start of how I got into hunting and shooting archery, and haven't looked back. And don't looking forward to the future, and I really enjoy it, and I love sharing it.
Yeah. Now that the website that you had there, what was the name of that one? How would they get a hold of you there?
Okay, boytharness.com. It would be the company I work for. We actually have a bunch of different companies underneath our umbrella. So there's Boyt Harness, which is known for its soft and hard gun cases. We also have TOC, the Outdoor Connection, which is known for its slings and swivels. Bob Allen, which is known for its trap shooting, sporting clays equipment. Mud River, which is known for hunting accessories, and Max Ops, which is known for its tactical gear. We also own another company called Goki, which is a leather footwear company that's been around since 1850. That's a whole nother website in itself. That's direct to consumer. Boyt Harness people probably have seen a lot of our equipment at their local hunting accessory dealer. But Boyt Harness has been around since 1901.
Well, it's been a while. Well,
yes.
for those that are listening and watching, I just want to let you know, besides listening to it on Spotify, you can also listen to it on Audible. It's free on Audible, and then you can watch the video. So those that we're gonna share a screen here in a little bit. Those watching the video are going to actually be able to see it, and that you can see. We record them live in the Arch Talk 101 Facebook group. So if you're in there, you'll be able to see it live. And if you want to watch the video, you can go out to archtalk101.com, and there's links to the videos, or you can go straight to my YouTube channel and watch the videos. So let's go ahead and share the screen for Boyt Harnesses, and I'll let you kind of talk us through your website here.
This is actually a really new website for us. It's been a project that I've been heading up for the last year for the company, and completely updated it. We're getting ready to add some features to this website, but this is a whole new look for us. Like I said, there's a lot of changes taking place in the company, a lot of excitement, looking forward to the next year with some of the new product that we're coming out with. But as you can see, we're known for our hunting gear, shooting gear, dog hunting stuff. You can go to the different titles on the top of the screen there, or you can scroll down and you can see all the different kinds of gear that we do sell.
That's quite a selection of gear, isn't it?
Yes. So for the company, I oversee the marketing, product development, and then a portion of the sales of the company. So I was brought in from PSE. They actually headhunted me down and got me to interview, and it was just a great opportunity for me, and I've enjoyed it. I mean, I do miss PSE. I had a great time at PSE, but this has just been a great learning experience for me, and just a really cool project for me. Learned a lot about the industry, about products, the development, the marketing and stuff like that. And it's just been a good time for me, and just excited about what the future has to hold for Boyd Harness.
Yeah, that sounds like it's a lot of interesting stuff to do. I know from 2001, 2004, I owned a sporting goods store and I was a PSE dealer. And so it's kind of, you say PSE, and when I first got the store, I spent a week down in Tucson at their dealer school. And, back then, they had like the Nova Bow had steel cables. So they actually taught us how to make steel cables, and that's an art that most of your boat techs now wouldn't have a clue how to even make them.
Exactly.
And wouldn't even touch them. And those that have made several of them, we wouldn't touch them either, because first off, trying to find the cables,
yes,
as one step above impossible. And if you do, they could be $100 to $200 a piece for them, and you have to make them in pairs.
Yep.
You can't just make one.
Now, you went through the school at George Chapman then?
Yes.
Yep. I actually, that's where I went through the school, was with George as well. Miss him dearly. He was one of the greatest guys I've
yeah.
met.
Yeah, that was really good. And one of the guys that was down there shot on the gorilla team, shooting the 90-pound bows. And he was telling me one time he was down there shooting, this guy was watching him shoot, and he's getting closer and closer. He didn't even realize it. This guy is standing right behind him. And when he shot, that arm went flying back. 90 pounds, it's going to come flying back. He was close. He smacked the guy in the face. That's how close he was. And of course, surprised the both of them. That, that's one of the stories that, they told while I was down there. And, it was kind of funny, dealer school, they take a bow and you strip it down to no two parts together. You have a bag of screws and cams and limbs and bolts and risers, and here's a box. Make it a bow. And you put it together. And I watch them making strings that, the power thing just zip, zip, zip. Their strings come out really quick.
Yeah.
They don't take long. One of the things that I didn't like about the PSE strings is they kept moving. Those black and white strings that they made, they constantly moved. And, my shooters, it's when I come in, the first thing I have to do is I have to make them a new string, because they wouldn't even bother shooting it. And, that was the biggest problem I had with them, except those that put the winner's choice on. Those were good strings. But the ones they make, and you can see how you make hundreds of them or thousands a day. You're not going to use expensive material, and I used a lot higher grade material that didn't really stretch. And I sold a lot of Nova bows.
Yeah, it's probably one of the best. It's like a lever action 30-30. Everyone had one.
Right. Well, and I sold more PSEs than all the rest of the shops in town. There was two other shops. One was mostly Matthews, and the other one was mostly Hoyt. But that both sold PSE as well. But I sold more PSEs than all the rest of them put together. And then there was one over, there's a couple other ones. But and I sold, the last year, I counted how many left-handed bows I sold. I sold 40% of my bows were left-handed. Last year I had my shop. And the reason was I stocked them.
It's funny. I had a shop up in Maine, and they used to sell like a huge percentage over everybody else in left-handed bows. And I asked him about it, and he sat there, and that was exactly what he said. It's because I have them in stock.
Yeah. As I don't know if you're right left-handed, but as a right-hander, most of the population seems to be majority being right-handed. So as a right-hander, would you want to go shoot a left-handed bow to see if you like it or not?
No.
No. And in the Nova bows, I carried 2 rights because there's 3 different sizes
Mhm.
and draw lengths. I carried 2 rights and 1 left in all of them, and always had 2 rights and 1 left on hand. And then on some of the higher end ones, I also had some of the left-handed ones because one of my shooters was left-handed. And one of the best stories, we ordered one in for my shooter, one of the higher end bows. I forget which model was now, but that's been 20 years ago. And it came in, and this guy come in, was left-handed and wanted to try that. So we tried it. He liked it. We sold it to him. Then I had to order another one for my shooter.
Yeah.
But hey, that's why you get a good price on them.
Yeah.
Because as you probably know, the staff shooters get a better deal than the dealer. But which is fine. I don't mind.
Yeah.
As the shooter, you should be able to shoot for 2 years and be basically shooting free bows because you should be able to sell your bow from 2 years ago for as much, if not more, than what you paid for it, because it's such a good price that you got on it.
Yeah.
And
it's interesting. You brought up a point about the strings and cables, and I was with PSC when they went to their live wire strings and cables, and it's a night and day improvement. The live wire strings and cables that come on the PSC bows now are just as good as the custom strings and cables out there. But that was a huge change for PSC. It was one that it took a lot of convincing on Pete to make happen. But it's an automated system now. So it's a computer. So a string made on Monday morning is just as good as one on Wednesday afternoon as Friday afternoon. It's really interesting. They were using 452X material. I don't know if that's changed in the last year or two, but one of the biggest improvements I saw with PSC when I worked for them was going to the new strings and cables. So
yeah, and that's good because that's one of the things that was the biggest downfall in the bows.
Yep.
Now, as far as the way they shot, if I got a PSE shooter in there or a Hoyt shooter in there with an open mind,
Mm-hmm.
And wasn't that a lot of the Matthews shooters, they believe in the hype. Now, are they good bows? Oh yeah, they're good bows.
Yeah.
So is Hoyt, so is PSE, so
Yeah.
pretty much any of them.
Yeah.
And if they come in with an open mind, I can get the Matthews shooters into my Pro Series bows.
Yep.
All the time. Hoyt shooters, yeah, not so much. That was a tough move from Hoyt to PSE, but Matthews to PSE was there. Now I had a Matthews before I become a dealer, the Q2, and I got that. And then when I become a dealer, I actually went down to this because part of going to dealer school, part of the cost was including a bow.
Yeah.
So I went down and I says, okay, I'm shooting a Matthews Q2. Which bow should I pick that's going to be as good, if not better, than that one? And ended up being the Carrera. You probably remember that one.
Yeah,
I still have it. That's my hunting bow. I still have that bow. And it's like after shooting that, setting that up, it's like I had no problem selling the Matthews. And then they come out with the was it the Scorpion? They come out with it, I think, in 2003.
Yeah.
As a 2-cam bow with a control cable.
Yep.
The next year they made it a single cam, and then the next year they dropped it.
Yep.
And I had the first years. That's my bow that I use for non-hunting, archery. And I need to make new strings, and on the sticker only give 2 sizes. So I'm looking on their website. Only thing I can see is with single cam. Don't see nothing for the 2 cam. So I got a hold of them. I sent up the serial number off the bow, and they sent me back the links. They knew what it was because I didn't have any sheets that told me, what the length was. And I don't want to try and measure it because it was, many years old.
Yeah.
And I'd actually made another string for it before. So I wanted to know what the size was. And I had made a string that it was braided, 3-color braid.
Okay.
So I took the 3 different color strands, and it's weird trying to figure out exactly how long because I make it longer than normal length, because you're not just twisting, you're braiding it.
Yeah.
So I took, braided it just like you would, braiding any 3 strands, and it was kind of, it almost made kind of almost a flat string out of it.
Yeah.
And then I put some twists in it, and I had that on there for many years. Probably too many because it ended up breaking.
Yeah.
And then, like all Botex, it took me a couple years to make a new string for it. I just had other things going on and never got to it. The last one to work on your bow is yourself, because you're working on everybody else's. And
yeah, I'm sure as a dealer, there was probably many a times where you'd set up a bow for yourself. Someone would come in, they'd look at it, they'd want to shoot it, and then you'd end up selling it.
yeah. Well, and all the bows, one of the things that we used to do with the Nova bows, and it's something I don't know if I mentioned or not, but as you draw back the Nova bows, you'd have a little creak in it.
Mm-hmm.
And so all my techs, they knew when the Nova bow come in, first thing they did was they took it apart and they lubricated the limb pockets.
Mm-hmm.
Squeak gone away. And then I also had all of them tie on. We used to call them, the boofer balls. You take a bass jig skirt material,
Mm-hmm.
and we cut it all maybe 3 inches long, and we'd put multiple strands on there, and we'd tie a knot really tight and with serving material, and then we cut it and form little balls on them. And then I took, and because it come with a quiver, the sight, the rest, and some with a stabilizer, and then for a while they didn't put stabilizer, but I'd put a sling and a stabilizer on it. Of course, the little cheap ones, the inexpensive ones. And then I'd add 6 arrows with tips in it. Because you could buy the Nova bow at Walmart, every place else.
Yeah.
But you couldn't buy it set up. You couldn't buy it, with arrows. That was extra cost. And you couldn't buy it with shooting instruction, because every bow, I taught you how to shoot.
Yeah.
Now, if you're an experienced archer, yeah, I'm still going to help you if you want, but lots of times they don't want any help. So if they wanted help, I'd help. But so all my bows come set up, which I charge $40 if you didn't buy the bow from me. So, and $100 an hour for shooting instruction. And I actually had one guy take his bow back. He'd called me up and says, "Do you think I can put it together?" And I said, "Well, you can put it together, but it won't rewrite. I charge $40 to set it up because you didn't buy it from me. And on top of that, I'm going to give you a shooting instruction." He said, "I'm going to take it back and get it from you." Because it's that value added, that's what can I set myself apart? I'm thinking that's what I was doing, not really thinking that at the time, but I just didn't want to sell the same thing Walmart did.
Yeah.
And that's why I never carried hard cases, the Plano hard cases.
Yep.
Because you go buy them from Walmart for $5 more than my wholesale cost was.
Yeah.
And then I had shipping on top of it. So it just didn't make sense. Now, if I wanted a high-end one, like something that you had, the cases that you had, high-end ones, Walmart didn't sell them. So then I'd order those in for you. I didn't stock them because not everyone wanted to buy a $100 case at the time.
You brought up an interesting point about charging for setting up the bows and stuff like that. And I know that having gone through George Chapman's university, he would talk about free has no value. If you get a free coffee mug and you drop it, you don't even care. So when you set up a bow for someone for free, they don't really understand or appreciate the value that they just got. There's so many dealers that I try to explain that to them. If you want to compete against the box stores, giving away setup, then you're just sitting there saying that your setup is just as good as their setup.
Right.
If you sit there and you put some value on it, then the person appreciates it and understands and respects it a little bit more. Another thing that you brought up was the creaking noise. And I actually have a funny story about that because I'm sure you're pretty familiar with Nathan Brooks. He was one of the top shooters in the archery industry. Great guy, love the guy to death. I remember he was shooting the Mojo and he brought up, because he used to talk about how when you'd pull back on the Mojo, he had this creaking noise. And he was at a tournament and he was in a shoot off. And he sat there and said that someone said, "Aren't you going to do anything about the creaking noise?" He's like, "No, I'm not worried about it. Shoots great." So he's in the shoot off and he sits there and he hears that creak and he goes, "Oh God, I hope my bow doesn't blow up or something like that." He could see the other guy just starting to get nervous, like looking over his shoulder. I just about died laughing. I probably don't have the story exactly right, but it was something along that lines. And I thought that was the funniest thing I'd heard in a while.
Yeah, that is kind of funny when you have a creak and then somebody says something that gets into your head.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, the creaking is just, it's not anything, if the snapping sound, that's a little different sound.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a creaking sound is just, they need lubrication, and that's
Yep.
why, on the Novas, we Tarpa. Now, I never had a trouble with the creaking in any of the bows except the Novas.
Yeah,
All the other ones are just great, and no problems. It's just something about that Nova, the way it was set up. They didn't put any lube in the pockets on those little half rounds, and
yeah. It was meant to be an inexpensive bow, so but there's models out there, not just PSC. Everyone has every once in a while. I remember one of the other companies, everyone had talked about this creaking noise. It was when you pull back, and they had two models, 82nd and the 101st, and so everyone knows what bow company that was.
Yeah.
Nice shooting bow and everything, but they had some, they had a couple of issues, and it wasn't really anything, big or anything like that. But it's funny that a lot of times when people hear that click noise or the creak noise, whatever you want to call it, a lot of times it's just because the bow hasn't been pulled back and they've got wax on their strings and stuff, and it's just settled, and they pull it back and it's just that wax separating from the connection of the metal or whatnot. And that's really all it is. And, like when I go hunting, the first thing I do when I get in the tree stand is pull my bow back just so that I don't have that noise.
Well, and I do the same thing when I get in the tree. First thing I do is I'm going to pull the bow back. Well, one, to make sure everything is all right, and make sure, I'm going to, as I'm full draw, I'm going to check, make sure I don't have limbs in the way and stuff. So I'm all set. And it also lets you know that you hadn't been practicing enough sometimes. Winter time, this is December, winter time. You're in big heavy coat. You climb up in the tree stand, you go to pull the bow back, and I shot 70 pounds, and I hadn't been shooting much since hunting season started because I'm going out hunting. First mistake, not shooting much, and I can't pull the bow back. I'm trying everything I can to get that bow back, and ended up pulling a muscle or something. Later when I said, okay, either go home or sit here. I'm going to sit. I sat, warmed up a little bit. I was able to pull it back, but man, I hurt for a week because I was straining, and I just didn't practice enough throughout hunting season. And then when you only have one bow, it's a bit different. And with the fixed blade broadheads, do not fly like a field tip. Anybody says they do, don't know what they're talking about, because they don't fly exactly like it. Now you can toot them to group, but they're not necessarily always going to group like your field tips. And I didn't care, because that was my hunting bow. It was set up to shoot broadheads, shoot X's with broadheads. And I didn't care if the field tips didn't hit in the same spot, because that's when I had two bows. And I didn't care, because I'm shooting field tips. I'm going to shoot my other bow, shoot my other PSC. And so I didn't care that it didn't shoot like the field tip, because I have another bow. And one of the things that you can do is, if you have two different sights, just change sights. Not have to reset everything all up each time. You just pull the sight up, put the next one on, and go. And those that have dovetails on them, nice, you can just switch out, get two types of dovetails, just pull it out and put it back in, as long as you put it back in the same spot. I had one guy one time says, no, one time he'd put it in, it'd be all the way in, it's gonna be all the way out, and he'd keep moving it around. And I says, you can't do that. You got to be in one spot. And he says he didn't believe me that it made a difference. Well, it does. The further out it is, the bigger your gap is. Between, for the distance, they get closer and closer together as you come in, and like, Oh, I guess it does make a difference. We've tried it, and then out all the way out, and shoot your different pins at the same spot. So you take your single spot, you shoot your 20, 30, 40, 50, and whatever you have,
Hmm.
and then move sight all the way out and do it again. And your gapping changes.
Yeah.
So like you got to make sure they're all the same, but I just like having two different bows.
Well, I have a couple of different bows myself, but 99.9% of the time that creaking noise is just our body, especially for older guys like you and me.
Yeah, it's our body making noises, not the
Yeah,
bow.
yeah,
When you draw
but
back, there's pop, pop.
yeah,
That's just my shoulder.
yeah, yeah. I haven't shot in a few weeks. Yep, that's all that is.
Yeah, that's
Um,
just normal. That's just me.
yeah, yeah. I set up a bow for my 3D competition, and then I set up a separate bow for just hunting. Right now for hunting, I use a Mach 1, the PSC carbon bow. It's one of the best bows I've ever shot in my life. It's just a smooth shooter, just really nice. For 3D, I shoot the XF33 with the S2 cam. I just like a little bit more weight when I'm shooting 3D competitively. And that XF33 is just amazing. They've got that's last year's model. This year's the Fortis. Really nice bow. I just didn't have time to bother with getting a 3D bow or shooting 3D competition this year, just because my youngest daughter is her last year in high school, and then she's getting ready to leave for basic training for the Army. And my oldest was in the Air Force over in Germany, and she's coming back. So it was just, and with work, with all the projects and stuff, I was just so busy that I didn't get a chance to get the Fortis, but I did shoot the Fortis at the ATA show, and really nice shooting bow. But that XF33 I've been really happy with. I took it out of the box, set it up, and it was just shooting lights out. I wish I shot as good as that bow shot, but it was one of the most comfortable bows I've shot, especially for 3D. So if you haven't gotten any new bow, Roy, you probably need to take a look at some of their new bows. They're pretty impressive.
I know it's like I used to tell people coming in my store, it's like, here you have all the different ones, and it's as well. You're ready to buy it? It's like, no, I'm just kind of looking. It's like, well, don't shoot it then, because if you shoot it, you're going to want to buy it. And and that's just kind of the way it is. I know when I was working at Cabela's, we would get in all big pallets full of returns, because we had, between myself and John, the other guy that worked there, we had lots of experience putting bows together, working on bows, all kinds of different problems. Pretty much between the two of us, there's pretty much not much we haven't seen or done with archery, and including setting up a bow to shoot 2 arrows. I did that when I had my store, but that's a different story. I've talked about that in the past. But we would get these bows in, and we might get 3 or 4 bows, the same model. This one has this problem, this has this problem. So, because we also sold used bows there as well.
Yeah.
So we would take all the good parts off of one bow, make one good bow, put it out for sale, and then we'd go from there. And then ones that were just really just not beyond fixing, because we just didn't have all the parts or something. And by the time you do that on some of these bows, it's if you don't have any cams or strings, the rest is just kind of mostly just scrap at that point. And we'd go through, we'd set them all these up, and I was able to get a couple of bows from them really cheap. The one bow I got was a bear. It was in a snow camo. It was $900 is what the list price was new. I got it for 100, 200 bucks, something like that. But it needed new strings. Okay, no big deal. I have the string jig. I've been making hundreds of strings. I have enough string material that I could make the new string every day for the rest of my life and probably not run out. Now I may not have a lot of choice in colors. I'm gonna have to buy some servings, but I have lots of string material, so that was no big deal. And then the other thing was one of the string dampeners, the bolt was messed up in it, so I just fixed that, and now I have another bow that I've never even put a rest on yet, but it's back. It's functional now.
It's kind of funny because you're, taking those bows apart and utilizing different parts and stuff like that is one of the things that I enjoyed about PSE, but yet didn't at times, is the Franken bows that people would make.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think there's another archery company that has the versatility that PSC had with the Franken bows, because you don't really see a lot of Franken bows with the Hoyt or the Matthews or anything like. And it's kind of like, how guys work on cars and stuff like that, and they do
Right.
all these alterations. It's the same thing on the bows and everything. And I just remember, I'd see some of these bows that guys would make, and I'd be like, yeah, that's pretty interesting and all that. But at the same time, I'm just like going, yep, I can just see they're going to be calling me up or emailing me, asking for parts. I don't know if you
Yeah.
saw that too much, but I saw it quite a bit.
No, no, I didn't. When we was working on the bows, we wouldn't take bow from one model to another model. It was all the same model. So we
Mhm.
get identical bows in with just different problems,
Yeah.
and so you could still go back and say, okay, I have this model bow, and get the replacement parts because it
Yep.
was exact parts for them. We didn't kind of mix them, because then it made a nightmare for not only us making sure it worked, but the customer couldn't figure out what to do with it. And this way it did meet the specs of that bow.
Yeah.
And I know there was one time, I don't know how they did it, but PSE come in with um, the tap for the sight was the wrong thread.
Okay.
I don't know how they did it. It's the only one I ever seen. And so I knew what the thread was supposed to be. Now I'm trying to find a thread, because it's a weird thread.
Yeah.
It's not the standard where you can't go to the hardware store and get that thread.
Yeah.
And so I finally found one. I had to order it from China or someplace. I remember stopped by the post office Saturday. I picked up the tap. I went into work. I retapped it, bolted it on, and sold that bow that afternoon. It's like, it just worked out. That was the bow they wanted, and I just fixed it. So now it was like it was supposed to be. And
Yeah.
it's weird. I did have one come in one time that I forget. I think it was for the rest wasn't tapped.
Okay.
That drilled the hole,
That didn't
didn't
tap.
tap it. I was like, so of course I get to tap it and sell the bow.
Yep.
Problem solved. This, like, I don't think I may have called them and let them know just for information, but I don't remember if I even told them. I just fixed it and went on. Because I had the stuff to do it. I had to be able to do it, and it wasn't any big deal. And working on people's bows, sometimes I tell them, it's a good thing you're not here when I'm working on it, because you wouldn't like what I'm doing to your bow. Yeah, when you have a stripped out screw on a cam, how do you get stripped out screw? You have to drill it out. So
Yeah.
now I got a drill, and I'm drilling on their cam. And then you get the right size, and all of a sudden, boom, the head pops off, out comes a screw.
Yep. I used to love that. So when I worked for Gainer Mountain, I started as a archery tech for them. And I remember one customer came in, and he was just like trying to tell me how to do it and everything. And I like looked at him. I said, well, why don't you do it yourself if you know how to do it and everything? Well, I just don't have the tools and stuff. And I said, why don't you invest in it? And he was like, well, that's what you're for. And he's like, just being really particular about it. And I was getting very frustrated with him. So we had like this little room that was off the side. And I went in the room and I just hung his bow up on a hook. And then we had this big mallet, and I just started hitting the table. And I sat there, and one of the other guys working, and he's like, you okay? And I said, yeah. I said, I'm just fixing this guy's bow for him. And I'm sitting there just pounding on the table. The guy opens the door screaming like, what are you doing to my bow? And I just started laughing, and there was a bunch of people out at the archery counter, and they just started laughing because they could see that I was just banging on a table. I wasn't even touching his bow at the time. And I said, listen, buddy, I said, I shoot competitively. I've set up hundreds, not thousands of bows. I said, I'll set up your bow and we'll have it shooting lights out and everything. I go, but if you're going to tell me how to do it, you might as well just take it, go buy yourself the tools and do it yourself. And the guy sat there and he kind of calmed down, and Nate, who was the other guy who was working with me, sat there and told him, said, listen, he knows what he's doing. Just let him do what he's got to do. And I was like, thank you. But yeah, it's interesting working on people's bows. I had another guy that came in with a wood riser bow. And he's like, hey, I haven't shot this in a while. Can you take a look at it? It makes a really weird sound when you draw it. And I looked at it and I was just like, yeah. And, and it was a few years old. And I just looked at him. I said, listen, I'm just going to tell you right now, I really don't like working on wood riser bows, because it's not a matter if they're going to blow, it's a matter of when they're going to blow up. Because I said, did you keep this in a temper? Well, I leave it out in my garage. And I was like, yeah. That's really not good for a wood riser bow. I said, but I'll take a look at it. So I started drawing it back, and all of a sudden, whack, and the bow came apart. The limb had broken off, came back, and it shot right into the calf muscle of my right leg. And I closed my eyes and everything, and I just stood there and I said, has everything stopped moving? And one guy goes, yeah. And I go, did anybody get hit? And they're like, no. And I said, okay. And I just dropped the bow, what I had left in my hand. And I looked at the guy and I said, I'll be right back. He's like starts freaking out. Where the hell do you think you're going? You just blew up my bow. And I said, I got to go fix the cut in my leg from your limb going into my leg. And he was all mad. And I came out and I said, listen, here's 2 bows. Choose whatever bow you want. I'll set it up and all that. And he was like, no, and his bow was, it was an inexpensive bow. And I was sitting there it was a bear package, and I can't remember, a golden eagle package that entry level bow. I said, I'll sit there and give you one of those bow packages straight across the board. And the guy's sitting there going, that's not what I want. And he's like pointing at the high end bows. He goes, I want one of those. And I'm like, no, that's not going to happen. I said, I don't even have to give you a bow. I said, I'm just trying to be nice because, you're a fellow bow hunter and I want you to get out there and enjoy the sport. And he starts throwing a fit. And I said, let me get a manager for you. Manager comes over and sits there and goes, what's going on? Tells the story. And the guy goes, I want one of these bows. And the manager looks at him and he goes, he doesn't even have authorization to give you one of those low end bows. Because I don't even know why he's doing it. He goes, he told you that it's a matter of when, not if. And he goes, but if he's willing to give you one of those low end bows, that's your choice. And he goes, if you want, you can pick up your parts and you can go home and you can try to sue us or whatever. He goes, he's doing you a favor by, giving you one of those bows. The guy picked out a bow. He actually didn't want me to set it up. He was giving me a hard time about it and everything. And it was so funny. I got him set up, took him shooting, and his buddy was there. And we're in the range and he's shooting. And buddy sits there and goes, you've never shot that good in your life. And he's pretty happy because I was giving them tips and stuff like that and helping them. 6 months later, that guy comes back in the shop and he sits there and he goes, hey, I'm interested. He goes, do you remember me? And I was like, no, not really. And he goes, I'm the guy whose bow blew up on you, the wood riser bow. And I was like, oh, yeah. And he goes, listen, I'm here to get a bow. And I go, what happened to your other bow? And he goes, I was just really happy with the service you gave me. And he goes, my friend sat there and, kind of explained to me that I should be thanking my lucky stars that you were so nice enough to give me a bow and get me hunting. He goes, but now I want to pay it back. He goes, I want to buy one of those high-end bows. And he goes, and I want you to set it up. So it ended up being a pretty good deal. But for a few minutes there, I thought the guy was going to punch me over his bow.
Well, you never know. And I know I had a kid come in with his dad, and the limbs was cranked out too far, and it actually twisted a little bit. So now the limb is above the pocket on both the limbs, and because he couldn't pull the weight back. And he went to another shop to have it fixed last time. So then come into my shop this time. And so I'm looking at it, and so I'm getting ready to put it in the press. And I said, you guys might want to stand back because this could come apart in the press. So I pressed it enough to take the string off so I could get it back in, because I couldn't just tighten the bolt because it had been against the pocket. So I finally get it back in, and then I crank it out to the max you can. And then I tell him, it's like, because I charge $20 to put it in the bow press. No matter what I'm doing, it's $20. unless I'm, tying in a peep or something, I
Yeah.
put it in bow press just to hold it. That I don't charge for that. But,
Yeah.
if I have to do any work on it, it was $20 to put it in press. So I got it all back together, cranked it out, and I tell him, now this is as far out as you can go. And that's when the dad told me that, yeah, he was over to the other shop and they told him the same thing. I say, it's $20 this time. It's $40 next time. $20 to do the work and $20 stupid fee. And his dad just looked at me and just left. He just laughed. It's like, do not crank it past this point. That's the
Yeah.
lowest it can go.
Yep.
And the only way is you can put a longer string or shorter string on them, and you can change, the weight that way. But that's not what he was doing. It's like, it's too much bow. And I see a lot of people shooting too much bow,
Yeah.
and or they're drawing it completely incorrectly. You'll see them draw them across their chest. And I
Yeah.
talk this all the time. Draw across your chest, using your arm muscles to draw the bow, your weak muscles, and then you're rising it up. Are they, shoot at the sky and draw back and then pull down? Well, is your arm stronger pulling down and is pushing out? No, because just try it sometime. Have somebody hold your arm up and you push down and resist. Now bend that arm and push away. You're much
Yeah.
stronger. So now they're using their weak muscles to pull the bow down, and then they're using across your chest, the weak muscles there, instead of using the back muscles. And you'll see them they're struggling and struggling. And I see this on TV on hunting shows.
Oh yeah.
They're shooting too much weight, because I can tell by just working through, and then they'll put that finger over it and they'll just slam on that trigger when they get ready to go. It's like, and these are supposed to be professional archers.
Yeah. Well, it's funny how very few of the hunting show guys you actually see at any competitions.
I don't know if it's how many there is, but I don't know if any that really compete.
Yeah, there's a couple, like Levi Morgan. He's got it. Chris Brackett had done it. He was actually he's probably one of the best natural shots I've ever seen in person. But there's a few of them out there that do have TV shows and shoot competitively. But you're right, when you see some of these hunting shows and you watch them draw a bow back, or just how they settle in, and you're like going, yeah. If you get a hard shot there, I'm going to be pretty impressed there. But it's some of them are kind of scary. A lot of times you don't see that portion of the video.
Yeah, because they've probably gotten too much flack for it. It's like, okay, dude, I can make you a better shot.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is you get somebody that can help you get better.
Yeah.
You may be able to outshoot me, but I can make you a better shot. And for my students, my goal is to make them outshoot me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
I can teach you. I may not be able to outshoot you, but I can teach you.
Well, I work with people who usually end up being better shots than me. But when I worked for PSC, I was pretty fortunate, because I actually, I oversaw the shooting team for the Northeast United States. And I was one thing that I was really proud of when I worked for PSC is my shooting staff in the Northeast had more world championships, more record animals than any other shooting staff in the world. And I used to brag about it on social media. I'd sit there, because my staff was just awesome. Great personalities, very nice people, always willing to help. But they were some of the best shots, always at shows or events. They're always willing to help out and stuff like that, which is nice. But there was times where you'd have people that are like, oh, I've been hunting for 40 years. And, I'd have someone like John Bozzi, who is one of the best shooters that's been in the archery world. And he actually has helped me with my shooting skills. I wish I would have listened to him a lot more and a lot sooner, because he did help me improve quite a bit. But, I was a little bit stubborn myself. But, they'd sit there, and I've been shooting bow for 40 years. And I would just look at him, and he is one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. One of the most helpful guys you'll ever meet. John just sat there and just yep. And he goes, and he worked with him. And by the end, the guy was shooting so much better. And the guy sat there and said, thank you so much. But yeah, I was very fortunate up in the Northeast with the staff. I had some great people. They're still great people, still stay in touch with them and everything. But Yeah, it was interesting at events or at tournaments and stuff like that, seeing some of these people that 20 years of bad habits and they believed in them.
Yeah. Well, I know, you've been shooting for 40 years. Well, you're doing it wrong because there's better ways now.
Yeah.
Back 40 years ago, they didn't know.
Yeah.
Back when I first started, they said, okay, get with recurs, just open your fingers. Just
Hmm.
open your fingers. Yeah, well, they found that doesn't work. And then what happens, you see a lot of them, they'll open their fingers, their hand comes away from the face.
Hmm.
They're like, okay. And it just so much cleaner, more consistency when you use them, a bit more modern ways. And I know there's new ways that I had to figure out. It's like, somebody talking about a string walker.
Yeah.
Is there anything like the Skinwalker on the TV show? It's like, okay, what is this? And finally I've interviewed a couple of people that use it and explain what's going on with it. It's like, oh, that's pretty cool. And then gap shooting and all this other stuff. And me, I look at the target and I draw back and I shoot. I don't look at my sight because I don't have a sight on my recurve. I use it for bow fishing. You ain't got time for sight.
Yeah.
When you're bow fishing, you don't have time to gap shoot. You don't have time to string walk. You don't have time to do all those things. It's get your anchor point, draw back, and release.
Yeah.
You don't have time to sit on an anchor point. You come back, you touch the anchor point, and you keep going.
Mm-hmm.
That's what time you have when you're bow fishing, because they ain't there very long. So you got to shoot consistently quick. Now, a lot of them are using compounds now for bow fishing. Nah, I can't do it. Because it's a different weapon. Recurve is one. Compound's it's a different weapon, shot completely different. My mind changes, my attitude changes and my thought process changes. With the compound, anchor point, I got the kisser button, I got the anchor, wherever my hand is. If I'm using a wrist strap, then it's this knuckle in that back pocket. If my hand held, then my hands turn a bit different. But I got my nose and the peep and all that all lined up, and then I find the sight. And I don't really look at my level anymore because I've shot so much that if I do glance at it, it's there, so I don't have to worry about it. Now, if I'm on a hill, I might check it to make sure because I'm already leaning in a weird position.
Yeah.
I come back and then pull through, and I can't do that bow fishing because for me, it's just one of those mental blocks that I'd have no desire to break.
Yeah.
So that's why I have a PSE recurve. First recurve was a Ben Pearson fiberglass recurve, back in the 60s.
That was one of my first ones. And that was actually my bow fishing bow. And I remember, gosh, I was home on leave from the Army, and I was going to go bow fishing with my buddy. And we get in the canoe and we're going down the river in southern Wisconsin. And I said, I'll let you go first and all that, just to let him have fun because he never had done it.
Oh, yeah.
And he drew back, and as he drew back, I don't know if he released it or what, but all of a sudden the bow just blew up. And I was and I think what happened is when he let go, he hit the corner of the boat or the edge of the boat, and that shattered the bow. And I didn't even want to talk the rest of the day. Because I just had so many good memories with that bow and everything. He felt so bad. He's like, I'll buy you a new bow. And I was like, it's not even worth the money. Don't worry about, that aspect. I said, it's just the memories, because I used to bow fish with that all the time.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you have those long limbs on the recurves, and they can, if you're not careful, they can get caught on something. And
Yep. So.
Yeah, I still have mine. I don't shoot it because the fiberglass is starting to separate a little bit, but I still have it. It has a little bracket I made on it to fasten my bow fishing reel onto it. I can't get my hand in anymore because that was in the 60s, so my hands are way smaller than they are now. So I can't put it in there, but I don't use it. It's still got the string on it, but I don't string it. I just keep it with it, just cause. And it's kind of more of a keepsake than it is a functional bow. because, 25-pound fiberglass recurve is, I can get a whole bunch of those easy. That's something that's a little bit newer and
Yeah. So yeah, it's definitely, archery world has definitely changed. I mean, in the last 20 years, let alone the last 50 years. Speaking of PSC, I don't know if you knew this, but PSC got sold this year.
no, I didn't.
Yeah, an investment group that's based around hunting ended up buying them. They're being the Lonnie Workman is now the CEO of the company. He was actually a sales rep like myself and worked his way up in the company, and now he's CEO. I still talk to Pete every once in a while. He's still kicking. But it's definitely a new change. I think there's going to be a lot, Pete wasn't necessarily big into marketing. He just let the bows basically speak for themselves.
Which they did very well.
Yeah, and they still do. It's going to be really interesting. I think Lonnie brings a lot to the table for PSC and the new ownership. He understands the industry. So it's going to be kind of exciting to see what happens there with PSC. But in just the companies in general, seeing some of these newer companies that are coming in, which is kind of nice. I mean, if you shot competitively, you didn't want to just go win. You just did want to show up. Like when I used to shoot the IBOs up in the Northeast, a lot of times I'd show up and I'd be the only one in my class. And it was like, yeah, I won, but whoop-de-doo, kind of thing.
Yeah, you're one and only. And
yeah, who cares? I win in my backyard all the time.
Yeah.
But these smaller companies are actually, they're bringing some new stuff, and Lonnie's going to sit there and, he's not going to let anybody, dictate to him, or push him to push the company in a certain direction. He knows what he's going to do. He knows what he wants to do. He knows what needs to be done. He's going to make it happen. So it's going to be really interesting in the next couple of years to see the changes that take place at PSC. I'm excited about it. Looking forward to it. Also excited to see some of these other companies coming up. Like I said, with Boyt Harness, been working with Athens Archery, made a case for them. Love Jim and Tracy, who own Athens Archery. Great couple, great people. Some of the other companies I've dealt with in the past, worked with Bowtech on some stuff, and really nice experience there. Darton has really been on the forefront this year. It's pretty exciting. They just did an announcement on their new bows yesterday. It was pretty interesting to watch. But it's pretty interesting in the archery industry right now, even though it's kind of like a lull, a lot of people would say in the industry right now, but I think you're going to start seeing some changes for the positive. So I'm excited about that and looking forward to it. Competition wise, the ASA is taking place this weekend, the ASA championships, and then IBO will be next weekend. So it'll be interesting to see what takes place. And it's one of those things I tell guys that are into hunting, go to the 3D courses and shoot them, get into that competition. Because that was one thing I loved about, even though I wasn't necessarily the greatest at competition, not the greatest shot, but that 3D hones your skills to the point where when I got into bow hunting season, I just gotten off of shooting IBO competitively. I was so comfortable. If a deer came in, I knew where that arrow was going to land. And, I think that's one of the things that will help archery is for people to get more involved in their clubs, their local clubs, is shooting competitively at their 3D events, or even their archery and, the indoor archery, shooting spots and stuff like that. I used to tell my team, I'd sit there and tell, I have a lot of 3D shooters. I tell them to shoot the spots indoors during the winter, because you can work on your form then.
Right.
And then when you get into the spring, summer, and you go to shoot the 3D, I like shooting IBO because I like shooting unknown yardage. Is then you can focus on, you got your form down. Now you can focus on, figuring out what that yardage is and, you know, what shot you need to make to be successful. And I wish people would understand and appreciate some of that aspect of that whole cycle of things. Start off in the indoors, work on your form, shoot the 3D to work on your distance and yardage. And then when you get into the bow hunting season, you know, you're going to shoot lights out. And then even before that, I wish people would learn a little bit more about setting up bows so that they can understand and appreciate it for, you know, not necessarily because they're going to set up their bows all the time for themselves, because we need the shop owners and stuff like that. We still need the dealers, but they can understand and appreciate more the work that a dealer puts in to setting up their bows, and they can understand and appreciate the bows even more. And I'm only talking about us guys that need training wheels to shoot. The longbows, recurve guys, that's an art form, and I'll never be that good. I bow before them. They're impressive. But for us training wheel guys, you know, learn a lot more. You learn a lot more about the archery by learning about setting up the bows. Even if you don't do it yourself all the time, you can appreciate it and see what goes into it, and then do that whole schedule of events to sit there and become a better shooter. And then the other thing is, get your friends involved so that we can grow the sport. Because I'm really afraid that archery is going to become a niche thing, kind of like fly fishing, where it's just us weird old guys, you know, that do it. You know, it's a fun sport, and I just wish people would get more people involved. And it's just a matter of getting them out there and, you know, letting them know that, yep, I didn't shoot that well, that, you know, when I first started out, and, you know, I'm 52 years old and I still don't shoot that well. So
yeah, I always tell us, like, you know, I like shooting spots to develop my skill. Then I know I can hit what I'm aiming at.
yep.
You know, if I can go out there and I know, okay, the X ring is not a problem hitting the X ring. Now, can I do it every time? Oh, of course not. So now I know I can hit. Here's my form. I know I can hit what I'm aiming at. So if I put my 20-yard pin or whatever pin I put on there, I know I can hit it. And then I like going to the 3Ds like you're talking about. It's like, hey, I just got a rangefinder. Was it last year? That's the first time I had a rangefinder. I got a little rangefinder, and because I always learned how to range find, you know, how to judge my yardage, you know, based on, and that's what's good about the 3D shoots.
Yeah.
Because I know if I know the distance, I can hit it. That's not the problem. What is the distance? You know, and then how do I adjust for it? If I think it's 35 yards, I got a 30 pin and a 40 pin. Well, now I need to, you know, go in between. Where do I need to go? So now it's just a matter of where to aim. And that's nice about single pins, is you just set it your distance, as long as you remember to set it and reset it. You know, I'm not fond of them for hunting. You set them for 20. If you don't set them for 20, it's like, oh, I shot this last one I shot was 30 and I forgot to reset it. Now you're missing. Of course, with multiple pins, if you don't pick a pin, you ain't gonna hit it anyway. How do I know? Yeah, I did that.
Yeah.
You know, it was like 10 yards away. I forgot to pick a pin. I had them all. I completely missed it. I just forgot to pick a pin.
Yep.
But you know, that's just one of those things. You forget to pick a pin. But that's what I like about the 3Ds, is going out there. And my goal in the 3D when I was going all the time was, I want to average 8. If I'm not averaging an 8 or better, that meant that I didn't average a kill shot on every animal.
Yeah.
And, you know, I didn't care where I was at. You know, when I was going with a buddy of mine, when he was alive, we'd go out and who gets to give the crap on the way home and who has to receive it. You know, the next week it might be different. And we're going out there, one I'd shoot first, and I'd shoot first, I'd shoot first. And you know, we kind of figure, okay, we're judging yardage here, because we're not using rangefinders. We're judging yardage. And then we kind of talk about it and, you know, help each other out with that. And, you know, we didn't care if we come in last and next to last, you know, or first and second, you know, because they're doing different flights. So you might be first, but you're in 11th place overall.
Yeah.
Because they group at 10.
Yeah.
You know, so it really didn't matter. And, you know, so we're just out there having fun, and take the kids out, and I take them out, you know, when they were shooting, started off with, they're like 5-pound recurve bows or 5-pound compound bows, and they wouldn't stick.
Yeah.
So if you could see where it hit, you give the score. Otherwise, they at least got 5 on every animal they hit, and we take them up where they could hit them.
Yeah.
You know, because even a pointed arrow won't stick at 5 pounds unless you get pretty close. So where can they hit? We didn't care because it was out having fun.
Yeah. It was, I didn't really utilize a rangefinder until, I mean, I was shooting competitively with the IBO, but I really wasn't using a rangefinder to help me because I just thought it was somewhat of a crutch. But then I started working for the IBO and putting together tournaments up in the Northeast. And I actually worked my way up to being on the national level. I was the national director for the different state reps and stuff like that for the IBO. And that's when I really got myself a really nice rangefinder so that when I was setting courses, I would know that it was, you know, the yardage was within the limits of what people needed to shoot and stuff like that. And that was when they first came out with the rangefinders with the angle deflection and stuff
Oh
like
yeah.
that. So it was definitely a learning experience. But when I was competing, because I didn't want anybody to say there's a conflict of interest or anything like that. And it was funny, by the end of the season of setting courses, I could sit there and stand at it, look at the target and go, yep, that's 43 yards. And then put the rangefinder up and go, yep, it's 43 yards. I got really good at it. And I was like, yeah, I wish I would have thought about using a rangefinder a little bit sooner. I could have probably worked on my yardages, you know, before the season really started by going out in the woods and just looking at a tree and going, yeah, that's 28 yards, and then checking it and going, yep, I'm on or I'm off, or, you know, taking a look at it, trying to, you know, read the ground or whatever to, you know, to get better at shooting 3D. I might be a little bit better now, but instead of looking at averaging an 8, which is really good because it's a kill shot every time. I might be trying to look at averaging 10 every time, but
yeah. That was many years ago when I was shooting, so I wasn't near as good. I didn't really have all the experience I do now, and so it's then it was just like, hey, we're going out having fun, and we weren't up with the top one, so but we didn't care. We're out having fun, and your way of using the rangefinder, that's really the only way to do it, is judge the yardage. And a lot of times when you're shooting, judge the yardage, take your shot, and then range find it.
Yeah.
Because you committed to that is the distance I'm shooting, and then you make your shot. And then if it's a good one, you don't even range it because you got it right.
Yeah.
If you're off a little bit, then range is like, okay, I was short, I was long. And when you get stuff at angles, that messes you all up.
Yeah. You know, that's one of the things I like about the ASA and having the known yardage, because, I like the unknown yardage, and I like the competitive side of things, but that's not necessarily everyone. Some people like to go out there and have fun and still come home with all their arrows and everything.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I do like about the ASA. I really, I try to promote people going out there and having fun. It's one of those things where, you go on a 3D course, if you take yourself too seriously, you're not going to have fun. So I one of the things I'm known for is I used to show up at the IBO World Championships and I would go shoot it in my sandals, and people would laugh at it. And I'd sit there and tell them, I'd say, listen, I'm not worried about winning it. I'm worried, I'm more worried about having fun and making sure everyone has a good time and stuff like that. And it's one of those things. Archery, can be very frustrating if you let it be frustrating.
Yeah.
It's kind of like being married. Yeah, you can get frustrated being married, or you can have fun with it. That's what I try to do. Is I try to have fun with archery, and I wish people would get more involved. It's a great sport. It teaches you a lot. It teaches you to be a little bit more patient. Put a little bit of more effort, a little bit more work to become better. Little things can make a big difference. It's a great sport. And the great thing about the sport is you don't have to be in great athletic shape to shoot it. You can sit there and you can be slightly overweight, and you can be greatly overweight. I've seen some people that doesn't matter. It's not a matter of being in shape. It's a matter of going out there, executing, and just enjoy it.
Yeah, and if it takes you longer to get between targets, who cares?
Yeah.
You know, as we get older, we don't walk as fast as we used to when we're younger. So, you know, I'm not going to go running between targets. You know, I'm going to walk because, hey, I want to have a little energy left by the time I get done, and you know, shooting 40 arrows at 40 different targets, walking around, who knows how far it is, depending on how far you spread them around, and you know, it's just fun to get out there, and you know, hopefully it's not too hot of a day, or you have plenty of water with you.
Yeah. And that's another nice thing about a lot of these tournaments now, like the TAC and the Reinhardt 100 and stuff like that. You know, even IBO Worlds, ASA, you know, no one really cares if you're flying the PSE flag, Bowtech, Boyt, you know, everyone's making great bows and stuff like that. I personally, you know, I can sit here for an hour talking about why I like PSE and why I think PSE is better and stuff like that. But when you go to those events, it doesn't matter. And that was one of the things I really like about it. I mean, some of the smaller clubs I've been to, yeah, you know, I've shown up with a PSE and they're all Matthews or whatever brand, you know, they're a certain brand, and they look down, you see them looking down at you, and I'm like, you know, I don't really care. I just go in there to shoot and have fun anyhow. But when you get to these bigger tournaments, that's the thing, is sometimes that scares people from the local clubs or, you know, level of shooting, is because they're afraid, well, I only have this brand bow. Who cares? Just go have fun. But when you go to the bigger events and stuff like that, no one cares. It's all a family, and it's amazing. Like at IBO Worlds, you know, I remember it was like a big party, and we didn't care. You know, PSE staff, we'd have a party, but we'd invite everyone to it. We didn't care. You know, let's just have fun, enjoy the fact that we're here, and then we'd help people. You know, we want people to succeed and stuff like that. And you know, people from other companies want, you know, most of them always want to see people succeed and stuff like that. It's just having fun, getting out there and sharing the archery, you know, experience, and just enjoy it.
Well, each of the bow manufacturers think their bow is the best, which they should.
Yes.
But it might be the best. One manufacturer might be the best ultimate bow, but not for me.
Yeah.
You know, remember when PSE bought Browning and they come out with that counter rotating cam bow?
Yep.
Yeah, I had one of those. I wanted to shoot that so bad. It's like, that was just so cool. You know, counter rotating cams.
Yeah.
It's like, so I'm setting it up and I'm shooting, and I could not get it to fit me. No matter what I did, I could not get it to fit me. I'm like, I can't shoot this bow. It just doesn't fit. And I wanted to shoot it. You know, it's not like, yeah, okay, you know, make me try and say, no, I really wanted to shoot it, but I just could not get it to fit me right. It just didn't feel right. And so otherwise I'd still have it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you know, but I like shooting all the different bows from different brands and stuff like that. And I could tell you, if I didn't shoot PSE, I could go down almost every company. I could tell you, this is the bow I would shoot from them and stuff like that. You know, like I said, I love PSE. It was, you know, it was family owned, made here in the United States. You know, a lot of the technology I love about it and everything. But there's other bow brands. There's some things that are unique about them, and you know, just get out there, shoot the bows that you like. You know, and it's funny because, you know, we're talking about different companies. Like I always talk about Boyt shooters are like Cadillac owners. They're going to buy a Cadillac no matter what.
Right.
You know, they know they're getting a smooth ride. They know they're getting something nice. You know, it's not a speed car. It's not a tech, you know, it's not a flashy car by any means. They know what they're getting and they're happy with it. That's great. Enjoy it. You know, there's things I like about PSE that other people probably don't like, you know, so it is what it is. But get out there and try out the bows and start shooting and get other people involved so that we can grow our sport and we can have our sport.
Yeah, and I always tell people when I get a new person in that was trying to pick out a bow, I was like, first I find out if they're right or left eye dominant, so whether I put them in the right or left-handed bows. So I'd say, okay, you know, if they're beginner, I didn't push them to the high-end bows just because they're not going to appreciate the advantage of having the higher end bow. They're not going to know a difference. So I'd you know, direct them to more of the kits, everything they need on one shot, figure out what they want and upgrade later. But I'd say put it in your hand. How's it feel? Put another one in your hand. Oh, I liked the way this one feels. Okay, let's set it up and go shoot it. Okay, what other one do you like? And keep it down to only 2 bows.
Yep.
I didn't do that one time. I had 6 bows out one time on the floor and could not figure out which one he wanted. So I says, okay, I'm going to put one in your hand. You're going to shoot with your eyes closed.
Yep.
And I put one in your hand, shoot it. Okay. And he didn't know which one he's putting in his hand because his eyes are closed. So,
Yep.
okay, shoot this one. Which one you like better and why? I didn't care what his reason was. I wanted to say why I like them, but pull that one out. Okay, try these 2. And finally narrow it down because your eyes closed, you can tell how it feels. With your eyes open, your mind gets involved. Instead of your mind's eye, or say whatever you want to say, you can feel how the bow reacts with your eyes closed. Eyes open, most people can't.
Yeah.
Until now, you and I probably could, because we know how to disconnect our eyes from the feeling and just feel how it goes. But a new shooter, not going to know how to do that.
Yeah.
And like on stabilizers, I'd put one stabilizer on. How's that feel? It's like, oh, okay. Put an expensive one on. Does it feel any better? It feel any different? No. Well, buy the cheap one.
Yeah.
But if you can't tell the difference, why spend the money?
Yep.
And that was always my attitude towards is, don't spend the extra money for spending the extra money. If you can't tell the difference, it's not worth the extra money.
Yep.
And if you can tell, then you have to decide, okay, is it worth $100 more for this? Do I like this $100 more than that one? If not, then buy the cheaper one. As your skills get better, you're going to know how to see all these things. You're going to say, oh, okay, all of a sudden, yeah, okay, I can tell the difference and I want this because I like this better. And until then, buy the cheap stuff. I used to have people, guys send them in to me because they know I wouldn't oversell them.
Mm-hmm.
You go in some of the other shops and they would push the highest dollar bow, then push the highest stabilizer, the most expensive rest and sight and release. So now you're walking in a new shooter coming in, back when I had my store, you're spending $350, $400 maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Other shops are trying to sell them in $2,000 of a bow for your first bow. I was like, why?
Exactly.
Some shots were commissioned. The higher the dollar, the more their profit was, the more their commission was. Well, I'm the owner. I'm 100% commission.
Yeah.
So if I don't sell it,
you don't get a commission at all.
I don't get anything.
Yeah.
When you push the lower end ones, you can get more people to buy the low end ones to start off with, and then not only they like that bow, they're in the sport, they really enjoy the sport. What are they going to do? Then eventually they're going to want a better sight. So come in, sell them a better sight.
Yep.
Oh, I want a better rest. Sell a better rest. Like, oh, I want a better bow. So you sell them a better bow. You move their good sight and rest over the new one and put the old ones back on there. And now they have a second bow that they can either sell or use. So now you're graduate, which means more sales in the long run.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing.
And a happier customer.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is a lot of dealers, I shouldn't say a lot, but there's a few dealers out there that they want to just push one brand for whatever reason. They have an emotional attachment. I wish they had more of an attachment to their wallet and long-term concept, because if you sell someone something and they buy it only because they felt like pressured to buy it, they don't necessarily enjoy the sport. They get out of the sport and they're like, yeah, I was forced to buy this $1,000 bow that I really didn't, couldn't afford to, I was really pushing my money and, blah, blah, blah. If they would have bought an entry-level bow from another company, they may have enjoyed the sport a lot more and said, okay, I'll get nicer accessories, the following years. A few years later, then they buy a high-end bow because they can appreciate the difference between a low-end and a high-end bow at that point. But they also are enjoying the sport. They don't feel like I invested all this money and I'm just having a bad experience because I'm not shooting well or whatever. They don't feel like they've wasted a bunch of money. And, I wish dealers would do, like, that's how I set up bows. Even when I worked for PSC, I was working at a shop to help them with an event. I'd sit there and put a bunch of different bows in the person's hand. I mean, yeah, I wanted them to shoot a PSC, but I wanted them to walk out with a bow that they felt comfortable with and that they wanted to stay in the sport, not just because, they made the PSC guy happy, for buying his bow.
Right. And that's when like you said, when you're at your store, they're going to have PSE because otherwise you probably wouldn't be there. But they're going to have PSE. They're going to have, the Botex, the diamonds, and who knows what other brands they're going to have. But
Mhm.
like I said, how does this bow feel in your hand? How's this
Yeah,
bow feel in your hand? It's like, oh, I really like that one. Well, it's not a PSE, but good. That's the one. That's bow for you.
yeah,
And they're going to appreciate that. And later on, they might start putting the high end bows in their hand. It's like, ooh, no, I really like this PSE way. It fits my hand better than the other ones.
yeah.
So it's all about doing what's best for them.
Yeah. And
If
the other
if
thing is a lot of guys come in and they come in with their friend. Their friend shoots brand A and they almost feel pressured to shoot brand A too, because that's what the friend shoots and stuff like that. And I tell them, listen, you're going to let your buddy choose your wife or girlfriend? No, so don't let them choose your bow.
yeah, yeah, just get out there and that's the thing that we need to make sure that they don't get stuck into
Mhm.
a thing. It's like, well, this is the best. I had guys come in and say, well, I'll get those, but my next bow is going to be the best bow.
Yeah.
What's that one? And most times they say Matthews. Those because Matthews advertises they're the best. A lot
Yeah.
of advertising, and they also pay their shooters very well to win with the Matthews.
Yeah.
And I was like, why do you say that? Well, they are. Well, why are they? And they can't answer it because
Yeah.
all they're doing is listen to the ads.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not gonna say Matthews aren't good bows because they are very good bows. They do shoot
Yes.
very well.
Yeah.
When I set my Q2 up, my very first shot was a perfect hole. Go
Yeah.
figure.
Yeah.
Of course, it could be just I knew how to set them up, but I wasn't that good at setting them up because it was before I even went down to PSC's dealer school. So
Yeah.
I just kind of roughly set it up and it shot great.
Yeah.
It wasn't near as fast as my Carrera. I think the Carrera was rated at what, 320.
Yeah.
I think.
Which was blazing back then.
Oh yeah, it was blazing fast back then. Nothing was that fast, and now there's not that many. They're a whole lot faster.
Yeah.
I think they're what, 340s or something like that
Yeah.
up there
Yeah.
now.
330 to 335 to about 345 is about the average.
Yeah. Well, and then too, I shoot fixed blades,
Mhm.
and of course, I'm shooting 29-inch draw length. I'm 29 and a half, but I shoot 29, 70 pounds. I'm not shooting a 350 grain arrow, and I have more than knock point, so I'm not getting my 320.
Yeah.
I'm down probably 30 feet per second on there. And at some point, as they get faster and faster, those fixed blades are harder and harder to control.
Mhm.
So then you go to mechanicals. At the slower speeds, fixed blades work just fine. I haven't had any trouble with mine shooting three-bladed muzzies.
Yeah, I shoot a fixed blade myself, but I shoot 60 pounds. It's about 405 grains arrow, 125 or 120 grain or 120 grain, 100 grain broadhead ram cats is what I shoot. I love it's amazing. Those do fly pretty damn close to my field points, so I can't complain. And devastating. I mean, at 60 pounds, I took a 400-pound plus bear with one, and it didn't go far at all.
Yeah.
It's much more about shot placement than anything.
Right.
But I'm not a big mechanical broadhead fan. I'm not a very smart guy, so I like to keep it simple. I follow the kid's rule. So I do love my my fixed blade broadheads, but I also shoot 60 pounds a heavy arrow for 60 pounds, and it works for me. But that's it's one of those things. Some guys like the lighter ones. Have at it. Just make sure
Yeah.
that you get that shot placement.
Yeah. Well, we're coming up on a kind of a hard stop here, so
No worries.
yeah. Give us some parting thoughts that you'd like to tell our audience before we head out of here.
Hey, just get people in archery, enjoy it, go out there to have fun. Don't take it too seriously. Don't take yourselves too seriously. Don't take life too seriously. From the Boyt harness point of view, look forward to next year. We're going to be introducing some archery stuff. I'm excited about it. We also have a bunch of other things, but go check out boytharness.com. see some of the other hunting accessories that you can get. And other than that, everyone have a great day and enjoy archery to the fullest.
Yeah, and I'll leave a link to boydharness.com in the description
Thank
for
you.
the podcast and on the YouTube channel. I'll leave a link there. And anybody that's on the Facebook group, if they're interested, just contact us and let us know if you have anything.
And if people want to contact me, they can contact me via Facebook, John Brown, just real simple, Jon Brown. You can catch me there. That's probably one of the best places to catch me. If you have any questions or anything like that, feel free to reach out to me.
Yeah, it sounds good. And just always reach out if you have a question. Like I always say, the only dumb question is the one you haven't asked, because once you ask it, it was a question and it's not dumb.
Yep.
Now, if you keep asking the same question multiple times, that might, so we're answering it wrong.
Yep.
Well, it's been great talking to you. My name is
Thank
Roy
you, Roy.
Canterbury, and I've been the host here on Arch Talk 101 with John Brown, and we had a lot of fun talking, and we'll see everybody in the next one. And take care and shoot straight and pick up that bow and shoot.